I'm Chad Ruthermond.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And welcome to NOCLIP Pocket. It's hand-to-hand combat. Today, we're going to be talking about the Pokémon Trading Card League, which was released on the Game Boy in 1998 and was developed by Hudson Soft and Creatures Inc. and was notably the first game to be published by the Pokémon Company, which is the three company whatever gang. They roam the streets of Tokyo and beat up people who play their games.
Is that Nintendo, Game Freak, and who's the third?
Creatures.
Oh, Creatures Inc. Okay. Yeah.
And they all own like an equal share. That's the economic talk for this episode. So I do want to talk about the Pokemon trading card game. I do want to do that as we'll say in the episode NOCLIP Pocket episode 12. I do want to talk about this game, but I feel like I want to take a step back and sort of abstract away from it real quick.
I feel like it warrants that.
Yeah, so this game centers around remaking the mechanics of an existing paper card game that actually exists in the real world. And I'm a Magic the Gathering player, which probably surprises no one as a host of a video game podcast, and have been playing since 96, since I was a small child. And those years, those intervening years, have shown many card games attempt to sort of put themselves into the virtual world. And what we've sort of settled on with games that exist currently, like Hearthstone and Magic Arena, and to a lesser extent games like Gwent and the Elder Scrolls card game and the Final Fantasy card game, whatever,
et cetera.
Yeah, is that the games are just basically a menu system for playing the game at hand.
Just a simulation.
Yeah. And this game really shows the level of artifice they thought was necessary to put around the game in order to play the Pokemon card game.
Yeah, I feel like one of the reasons they did that is because this is clearly aimed at young children. One of the big... I hadn't even thought about this game in probably over 10 years, which is one of the reasons I wanted to do it, because we both owned it.
Right.
And I assume most kids who liked Pokemon in the 90s also just coincidentally own this game.
Yeah, to put into context a little bit that I read before coming on here was that this was the fourth best-selling game in Japan in the year that it came out, which is kind of crazy, but it did have the Pokemon name on it.
Exactly, yeah. But anyway, as I was saying, one of the big hurdles to playing this now is the time investment. This game assumes its audience is 8 and has infinite free time, because you can be playing a match, because it's real, it's as much time as it would take to play one in real life. So you can be playing for 10 minutes and then have a string of bad luck and lose and have to start all over, and it's super discouraging.
It is. Also, it in my experience takes even longer to play than a match of Pokemon in real life, because in real life you don't have to navigate a menu to look at your hand, which is kind of you basically, by the end of this game, which, spoilers, I didn't get to the end of the game, you have to have just memorized all the cards that you have, because checking them is just not feasible from a normal human being's level of patience perspective.
Yeah, it is a bit annoying. It feels like there should be some kind of quick view, way to view a card's text.
90s Pokemon games were not particularly well known for doing things in a quick and efficient manner.
No.
So I'm not terribly surprised by this decision, but it's a little irritating, I would say.
Yeah. Before we get too far away from it, though, I do want to talk about the fact that this is like a kind of an adventure game, or however you want to put it. It takes like the aesthetic of like the original Pokemon games. It kind of looks like a middle ground in between like the first and second generations of Pokemon, where it has like the simpler sprites of the first game, but it's all in color and like a little bit more like polished. And it's got a really cool soundtrack. That's probably one of like the best things about it.
Yeah.
And it's really novel even to this day, that because it kind of follows the formula of the main games, where like you start out as like a young protagonist and you go to the professor's lab and he gives you a starter deck and he teaches you how to play, and then you go and you challenge all the clubs and beat their leaders, and then there's like an Elite Four equivalent that you have to fight as well. So I mean, like, it is a neat idea. Yeah, it's very of its time.
I feel like even saying that it like mimics a typical Pokemon game, or the first generation of Pokemon games, is even giving it slightly more credit.
Yeah, I don't know how else to describe it.
It is just like exactly a Pokemon game, but they just took the routes out.
Yeah,
they replaced the routes with a
map.
fast travel system. Yeah, to allow you to go to the different gyms or clubs. And then you battle the people there. And they're even like NPC trainers that you can also battle to get cards from to build your deck.
Yep.
And I believe that the way that I felt about this when I was 7 was, this is a really good idea and I like it a lot. Mm-hmm. And I think to right now, I still kind of think that. I think that was a good route to take this, but I feel like it ages much worse, because at the time it felt like, oh, it's like they mapped the card game that I know and have played onto the video game that I know and have played, and it makes sense because they're the same brand or whatever. But now that we have, in previous episodes of the podcast, many times stated Pokemon has been rehashing the same thing over and over again, it now makes this look like much less of a unique idea.
Yeah. It feels very much like what it is, at least from my perspective, which is they wanted to release this game to teach kids who already like the main series games how to play the card game. And I know I learned how to play the card game from this. Like, I only ever collected them and had no clue how to play the game before ever interacting with this.
If I remember correctly, and we're taxing my memory pretty hard going back this far, but I think that this was my first exposure to the card game as a whole. Like, I don't think that I even knew it existed before the game came out. So there's that. And I did buy the cart, so it did work.
Yeah.
They had me in their grubby little paws.
Yeah, it's crazy just how much, like, how popular the cards were, given that, like, I feel like 90% of kids never played the card game.
Hashtag only 90% of kids.
Yeah. But, like, I remember there was a period of time where my sister and I took piano lessons out at the mall, and we would always, or not always, but often stop at Toys R Us and get Pokemon cards as well while we were over there. And I just remember that being like a big deal for me, you know, as a 7-year-old.
Well, yeah, I mean, even as an adult, like, and we talked about this with JJ when he was over recording a few days ago about, like, buying ourselves, like, reward packs of Magic the Gathering. Like, this is, like, a definite, like, the whole, like, trading card sort of, like, loot box-esque design is designed to give you that sort of, like, dopamine trigger. So there's a lot of fond memories.
That's the thing is, though, is I just put the cards in a binder, though. Like, it was just a collection to me.
Yeah.
But I got really excited about it. And they would do, like, the, like, hosted, like, events there, too, at the Toys R Us, where, like, people would actually, like, play the game. And I know my one of my cousins used to play, but, like, I never even, like, attempted to learn.
Yeah. I do see. I don't know. I have a couple of things because the first one is I feel like Pokemon cards are especially good for collecting purposes and for selling on the prospect of creating a collection because Pokemon, the franchise, the characters are supposed to be what you sort of like attached to.
Mm-hmm.
And so your favorite Pokemon could be like a card in the set and you can just get it and it's not really tied to how good the card is. You just want that card because it has that Pokemon.
Right.
And that's like a whole, like, that's just a thing that you can do. Like, if I buy a pack of Magic cards, like, I'm not excited that I got, like, a Vidalkin or something. I love this one. Like, I'm entirely focused on, like, the mechanical value that the card provides, or monetary in some cases. Whereas with Pokemon, like, if I can buy a foil cellophane wrapped pack and get a tiny card representation of your virtual best friend, and that's a really strong selling point and is good for collecting. The other thing, though, while we're on the anecdotes about the Pokemon card game,
yes,
is I remember like this is like a year into college, so this is pretty far outside the realm of me buying Pokemon cards.
Yes.
I took all of my Pokemon cards that I just had in a box to a friend's house, and we were like, let's just like figure this out and play around.
Yeah.
And so everyone's like going through, and people were going through decks and going through the cards and being like, oh, I'm gonna need like this many energy cards or whatever, and like refine the shit. And it's like, none of us have played in years, but still have some understanding of how it works. Mm-hmm. And I feel like a lot of that is because of this game and not because we all played the card game.
I was never a big card game person, just in general, as a kid. So the actual Game Boy game was like really hard for me. Mm-hmm. I remember it being kind of like impenetrable and like off-putting. But coming back to it now, having played Magic since then, I felt like that helped a lot. Mm-hmm. Like just understanding like how any card game works, like trading card game. They have like a kind of similar DNA.
Yeah, and well, at the time, the game was also made by Wizards of the Coast, who made and still makes Magic. So the to actually get into the game, and because the mechanics of the game are so heavily tied to the card game, we can kind of talk about these things at the same time.
Right.
I feel like one of the things that coming back to this game has done is made me realize that like every card game has a rocky start, and they do some things that seem reasonable but are actually like maybe not all that reasonable. There's a concept in like deck building like card games that's called card advantage, which is like how many resources can you acquire in relation to your opponent. And there are cards in the Pokemon trading card game that are totally free to play, called trainer cards, that just give you infinite cards. And it makes making a deck, for me, challenging to put in things that make me want to actually win the game, and instead just fill the deck with cards that make me draw a lot of cards.
That is your thing.
It really is. And so, like, Professor Oak is a trainer card that just says discard your hand, draw 7 cards. It's Wheel of Fortune, but it's in Pokemon. And I'm just like, fuck yeah, I always want to draw 7 cards. Why would I not want to draw 7 cards? And then I just get, like, tanked by the other guy because I just threw away, like, a bunch of energy or something.
Yeah, and the way, for at least from my experience, I beat 2 of the clubs, and it really feels like the AI always gets a good hand.
Yeah.
And, like, it's really frustrating when you draw a shit hand.
Because you can't do anything about it.
Yeah, you can't, like, what's that called?
Mulligan?
Yeah, you can't mulligan. And they'll just, like, destroy you.
Mm-hmm. And you're like, what? And you kind of just have to... Is there, like, a quit? Can you, like... I mean, you can do it, because what I would probably do is just turn the game off and turn it back on.
as I was just playing it, and I couldn't find the option. I didn't really look that hard, though, so it might be there. But I think that there isn't one.
Yeah.
You just had to turn the game off.
Yeah, so you either have to turn the game off or sit there while you just get your ass handed to you.
Hope that it goes quickly.
Which seems like kind of a questionable decision.
Yeah. Did you... There's this one NPC that's like a mime.
Yeah.
Did you run into that guy?
I did. I have, like, a recurring nightmare that started when I was very young about this dude.
Mm-hmm. That was the thing about this game that really stood out to me as a kid, and I'm kind of surprised that there isn't, like, a creepypasta about that character. Or if there is one, I haven't read it, and I will search for it after this recording.
Right. We'll come back. Wait the 5 seconds after the end of the episode and see if we come back and we're like, guys, hold on.
But I'm pretty sure that's based on, like, a real person.
Yeah, he's like a Japanese comedian, if I remember correctly.
That sounds right.
Yeah, it always stuck out to me because it's super weird.
Mm-hmm. He has his own, like, art, doesn't he? Like, his own card.
Yeah, I think they actually printed those as like a promotional thing, but they're like not allowed to be used in the game.
And one thing that really stands out about this game is how well they recreate the card art. Mm-hmm. I just remember that being really impressive at the time, and it still looks really good because like they're pretty high detail. I guess this game is pretty simplistic graphically, so they're able to do that. But it looks really good. Because we've talked about like. I hate that, like, we keep bringing this up, but the Super Mario Land 2 episode, in multiple times we brought up how good that game looks graphically compared to other things that got released in a similar time frame. Now, this was, like, the Game Boy Color. It's another sort of a console generation step up. Yeah.
And it's, like, there's a 6-year gap between the games.
Yeah.
But, like, I'm amazed at how well... Because, like, you look at that and you go, like, oh, wow, they really made those sprites recognizable. Versus, that literally looks like a thing that I own.
Yeah.
It's crazy how good the art looks.
Yeah, it's because... I would imagine it's because there's no animation that they're able to show more detail on the screen.
Yeah, you can put, like... Yeah, I think more details probably all I was going to come up with there. But just, like, the small things, like when you're making pixel art, the little bits that, like, add depth to the image makes it would, like, with animation, you would have to then move those, which would become a disaster instantaneously. So, yeah, that's probably what it is.
Yeah.
Crazy good shit, though. One thing this game does that I'm actually kind of amazed, like, looking back, is it allows you pretty much full customization of your deck just whenever sort of you want to.
And you can save several different ones.
It's up to 4.
Yeah.
Which that fact is not something I picked up from playing. It just happened to read it recently. But, yeah, so you can save multiple decks, and you can customize them entirely using the collection of cards that you amass. And you rebattle people to get booster packs. The booster packs contain the same cards when you beat people again.
Yeah, that's another thing where you go to the PC and like you get an email from the professor that tells you that, like, rebattle people to get the cards you want. And it's like, man, yep, aimed at 8-year-olds. Like, just do the same thing over and over again.
But it gives you a consistent way of getting the same cards. That's true. So that is a thing.
No, it is a good decision, but man, it's just also time consuming.
It really is. But like that's something that not even like I mean I don't know. I don't want to like go quite that far. There's a really popular version of the Magic online, not online, but Magic offline.
Right.
Like video game Magic the Gathering called Duels of the Planeswalkers that was really popular because it looked really good and like its interface was pretty seamless, and if you've played Magic Online you know it's the opposite of that. It looks really bad and is impossible to play. And so that got really popular, but there were like 8 possible customization options. Like, it was very slim, and changing too many things would just make everything unplayable.
Yeah.
And this game came out, like, literally 15 years prior to that. And it's just like, nah, dude, go nuts. Like,
Yeah.
you know where to get the cards, you know how to get them, and then you can, like, sort of assemble a strategy.
Yeah.
Assuming that you know the cards.
Yeah, and you can actually trade cards like with a link cable. I never did that, but I just thought that was a really cool thing that it allows you to do that. And I'm pretty sure it has like an import option. Like you can save decks. I don't know if you need another copy of the game. Like you can import it from another.
Oh yeah, from another save file.
Yeah, from another
something.
save file. Like, I don't know what you would store the data on other than another Game Boy cartridge.
Yeah, it might just be like you can sort of trade decks with people where
Yeah.
they send like a list, and then if you have the cards, it compiles it for you.
Yeah. So if you had 2 copies of the game, that would make it really easy to replay it. And you just send your really good deck over and just steamroll the game.
I also like to call out Card Pop, which, in addition to being kind of a precursor to mystery gifts from later Pokemon games, also is just a really, like, kind of catchy and cool name.
Yeah.
Like, it's a good idea, and they kind of have implemented it with amiibos in recent games, where, like, you'll scan the amiibo and it'll just, like, give you a randomized, not that great reward, but it's, like, something for doing it. And this is just like, oh, you run into somebody, card pop, everybody gets a free card.
Yeah.
Like, that's just a cool mechanic, and I think encourages people to actually, like, talk about the game.
Yeah. Looking back, Pokemon really was ahead of the curve on like social features at the time. They've since been
Slightly behind.
yeah, fallen a little bit behind, but they used to be at the forefront of that kind of stuff. Yeah, I never really personally interacted with it, so I don't really have much else to say other than it's cool that it's in there.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, is like, you're right that they were ahead of the curve socially, because their games not only, like, they encouraged player-to-player interaction, like, in-game, but even more than that, they encouraged people to discuss the games.
Yeah.
Like you might do on our Discord server, link in the description. Like, with each other to, like, you could, like, theoretically work together with a friend to, like, brew a deck, or in the other Pokemon games just talk about, like, oh, where did you find that Growlithe? It's like, oh, he's in this route, in that grass.
Right.
And, I don't know, that's, like, kind of, I think, was sort of their design philosophy, and the fact that they carried it into even this version of the game, I don't know, it's just really neat.
Yeah, my own personal experience is that I feel like everyone I knew had this game, but like no one ever actually really played it. But as you said, like it was the 4th most like highest selling Game Boy game in Japan the year it came out, and I can imagine that it would probably like the social features were probably used a lot over there, because that's kind of more like the way they're like. Their culture is that they like the social features of Pokemon arose from the kind of like social, like the teen culture.
Yeah, spending a lot of time on public transit and stuff like that, like, kind of breeds that sort of a thing, which is still like limited by the Game Boy being the Game Boy, and the fact that a match on this would take you the length of a bus trip to play. But no, it is still good. I want to talk about, and we kind of skirted by this a little bit earlier, but I think we need to bring it to justice here in talking about the plot of this game that exists for some reason.
You're gonna have to give me a refresher.
It's specifically because it's very simple, because it's the same as like a regular Pokemon game, except the reason that you're going on your spirit journey to collect all the cards and defeat all opponents is not, in this case, just like the personal gratification of becoming champion of the nation or to whatever. And they have, like, in the more recent games where you have to bring balance to the forces of nature or whatever with the legendary Pokemon, the secondary storyline. In this game, your goal is to collect the 4 legendary Pokemon cards.
Okay.
Which is insane. Like, I guess it makes sense in a sort of, like, Pokemon anime or, like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime situation.
Yeah, it feels like if in the main games, like, your ultimate goal was to, like, catch the legendary Pokemon, like, I can kind of see that. And it gels with, like, the collecting aspect of a trading card game.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I feel like on the outside, to me, it sounds like the craziest thing that they could have thought up and then just went with it. Because, like, the idea of having, like, a legendary card is, like, what was it, like, crafted by the gods?
Yeah,
like
it's like the golden tickets to Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory. They only printed one of each.
Yeah, and it is like the golden tickets or like like the legendary pieces of Exodia.
Okay, yeah.
Situation because like that's the only thing they think they could have done.
Yeah.
Like it's like they had no other option, even though that option was crazy. But I love it. Like in the abstract, it's insane, but I love it.
Yeah.
And I like that. Like you get them and you can put them in your deck, and you can even, like, battle the same guy more than once to get multiple copies of the legendary cards.
Which have a deck of only those.
It seems like you could really corner the market there.
Yeah.
But it's, the legendary cards are fittingly the 3 legendary birds. And Dragonite, which is a little less fitting. But I guess they didn't want to put, like, Mew in or something. Yeah. I don't know.
I was going to guess Mewtwo, but...
Yeah, no,
I actually got a Dragonite from a booster pack.
This is the legendary Dragonite.
Okay,
it's a different. Which is apparently this is all because once again I didn't finish this time through. I looked this up, and the legendary Dragonite actually did get printed as a card.
Nice.
And the other ones all involve the computer doing something at random, so they can't be printed on physical cards. Which is, 1, a huge missed marketing opportunity, but 2, also a genius use of the medium, because, like, if you're gonna do a game like this, why not have, like, some endgame crazy shit that can't happen in real life?
So what exactly do you mean by that? Like, what's random about it?
It's like...
like what the card does, or...
Yeah, I couldn't find, like, hard text just looking for it. But the implication was that it was something... it might actually just be better audio if I just, like, literally Google it right now and see if I can actually find it. Thank you for holding. Your podcast is very important to us. Please stay on the line, and we will be back to you as soon as possible. And I'm back. After having looked that up, I think the way that it's not used in the game, like in the paper game, is mostly because they just choose not to print things that are like choose something at random, which is like... While they're like sort of kitchen table ways that you could do a random effect, the like doing it like in an official manner is usually not. People don't love that,
right?
So that's why they only printed the Dragonite, which does not do that.
Okay.
And like in the Moltres' case, it like fetches fire energy out of your deck randomly between 1 and 4 of them.
Okay.
And the Zapdos deals 30 damage to a random Pokemon on your opponent's side of the field.
Okay.
That kind of a thing. So there's that.
Okay.
Man, the tempo is just gone.
I feel like I battled a trainer with a Pidgeot that did exactly that, though.
That just did random damage?
It had, like, a move called, like, Razor Wind or something that's not, like, like a real Pokemon move or whatever. But it did, I think, exactly that. It did 30 damage to a random Pokemon on, like, in my... hand.
On the bench?
Yeah, on the bench.
Yeah. I don't know, then. I'm not Wizards of the Coast.
That's weird.
Yeah. But, that's another, like, random elements. There's already a ton of random chance involved in any kind of card game like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Pokemon really leans into that more than I would prefer for a game like this. Because one of the things, like you mentioned, where you can just kind of get bad luck for a little while is not just like you don't draw the cards you need, but it could also be your attack involves you flipping coins and like you just not landing them.
Mm-hmm.
And that is also incredibly frustrating.
Yeah. When I was younger, I got pretty good at always flipping it heads up, because if you hit the A button, like when you can see Pikachu's face, because like the coin spins, it'll always land heads up, but it's really hard to execute on that.
Is that actually a mechanic in the game?
I don't know if that's intended. It's just like a thing I figured out.
Okay.
Like I got the timing down right to where like I would always hit it like right on the second spin, and then it would always land heads up, most of the time.
Interesting.
And back when I had like infinite free time,
right.
As like a preteen or whatever, I got like to where I could do it like 75% of the time.
All the time.
100% of the time, 75% of the time.
Man, okay, I wonder, because like my initial thought on that was, is this going to be like the hold B while you throw a Pokeball to make sure that it catches it, where it's like kind of an urban myth.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, I didn't look it up. If that's true, then my computer opponent that I played earlier did not know this, because in one match, this dude used an attack that flipped 3 coins, did 20 per heads, 3 times, and had 1 heads. That's 1 in 9.
Yeah.
Came up heads.
Yeah, I've messed with it enough to know that when you hit A into relation to where the coin is when it's spinning does affect how it lands.
Insane.
Yeah, no, it's very weird.
Yeah, I did not know that. So I guess there's bad luck, and I guess there's also incredible skill. So
skill that's not worth mastering. Because I know it times out as well that like if you're just mashing the A button, it will always land heads down. Like if you hit it like right as it comes up, it always lands tails.
Man, wish I had known all that, because I just mashed A whole lot. I didn't even because I remember when I started the game, right? This is the level of patience that we're working with here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I started playing this, I was like, oh man, this is like Chad's worst nightmare.
Yeah, so they're like, what do you want to ask about? And it's like this fucking mile-long list of rules. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, nah, I'll figure it out as I go along. And I did, fortunately, remember a lot of the rules, but I would have done the exact same thing if I'd never played the game before.
Yeah. I mean, you don't even have to ask about any of that stuff, because the tutorial match is slow and grueling and make sure that you know everything.
Yeah, arguably one of the worst tutorials, game feel-wise.
Oh, yeah.
In any game ever.
But I feel like it was warranted, because I know I needed that as a 7-year-old.
I think that a step-by-step tutorial game was warranted. What was unwarranted is if you do not what they tell you to do exactly, they yell at you and then return you to the beginning of the turn, which makes you redo some steps, which is incredibly frustrating, because I wasn't always reading all the words they were saying to me. So I was I got sent back to the beginning of a turn twice, lengthening the process to an intolerable degree.
Yeah, the tutorial is so long and slow that when I picked it up to play it for the podcast, I did the tutorial and then was like, well, that's enough, and then just saved it and turned it off, because I was like, it takes like a half hour. I'm like, oh, it's enough of this for tonight.
Yeah,
I'll actually play the game tomorrow. Have we wrung the sponge dry?
I'm almost feeling that way. I feel like a lot of a lot of what this game brings to the table, cancel that. do we have final thoughts? Because I do.
You can go first then.
Because I think that a lot of what this game brings to the table is just having a computer opponent to play the card game with. So whether you're familiar with the card game or not, like, this actually is sort of like a this is an experience that I think is worth having just for the sake of, like, I don't know, it's a really realistic representation of what playing a card game against a person who doesn't look at you or talk or do anything is like. And that's, I don't know, it's interesting how early that the game came out and how much content is here for the time. And I don't know, it is a predecessor of a lot of things that have been more polished and, like, evened out, but the parts of it that feel old and archaic are also, like, the most unique elements of it, and not something that I would want to take away from it.
Mm-hmm. This game, I feel like, made sense to exist when it came out, but, like, nowadays, it kind of feels like it just serves as, like, a nostalgic reminder of just how popular Pokemon was at the time that, like, this game was made.
Yeah.
It's like, it's hard to imagine, like, a new, like, children's IP coming out now and being so successful that it gets a game like this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just, like, a weird spin-off that no one would ever think of. But yeah, it feels at, like, both really, like, slow and dated and aimed at children, but simultaneously, like, really unique and creative and interesting. It's definitely, like, just kind of, like, a bizarre thing to exist, and I feel like this game will always be intriguing to me, even though, like, it's hard for me to get into it.
Yeah. Can you imagine if the Gwent game involved, like, segments where Geralt just walked between, like, Gwent locations?
He just walked
Gwent
between
clubs?
like, bars.
Yeah, he goes to a different tavern.
Yeah.
And they're just people sitting there waiting for opponents.
It's called The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt.
Oh, shit. Thank you for listening to NOCLIP Pocket this week.
What are we talking about next time?
If only I remembered. Only if this joke is bad. We are talking about only if next, right?
Only if Chad hadn't made that joke. Yes, we are.
All right. Next time we're going to be talking about only if, which, it's now been so long since we played this originally that I remember very little about it, but it is a free download on Steam. So check that out if you want 40 minutes of very bizarre entertainment.
Yeah, I remember a couple of key things in it, but I also forget most of it, and I'm looking forward to revisiting it.
Word. Until that time, if you want to get a hold of us, all of our contact information is on noclippodcast.com or on splattershot.pro. There you can find our email address, links to the YouTube, to iTunes, to Google Play. Check out all of our old episodes. Then check out all of our episodes again on a different platform. Really got to get that view count up. And then go ahead and join us on our Discord, where we are actually, it's been so recently that we last spoke about the Discord, like, recording wise, that the only thing that's really being talked about right now is the episode that just went up today.
Yeah. And there are few enough people in it right now that if you join, we'll actually talk to you.
Yeah, our conversations have actually had a meaningful discourse.
Yeah, at least JJ and Chad are good at responding. I'm an old man and always forget to check it.
This is true.
I'm sorry.
right.
Nickelodeon.